Have you ever held onto a burden for so long that you forgot what it's like to live without it? A pain, a hurt, a word that wounded you and stuck around. But it's time to look inside. Does it really need to be there anymore? Someone is trapped in this story. Someone who may not even have the courage to reach out, but who deep down just needs a chance, a word, a gesture. And it's not just about the other person. It's about what happens when you decide to let go, when you choose to stop carrying something that only causes pain. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, but it liberates you from the impact it had. So, it's time to be honest. Who needs to be forgiven today? The truth is that no one realizes the weight they're carrying until they try to let it go. At first, it feels like you're in control. I'm fine. It doesn't matter. It's in the past. But is it really? Or is it just tucked away in a corner, ready to resurface at the first opportunity? Resentment doesn't shout. It whispers. It hides in the little details of everyday life, in automatic reactions, in the way you see certain people. It affects how you live without you even noticing. And it might be difficult to admit. No one likes to think they're stuck in the past, but there are marks that remain. The question is, does it have to be this way? Do you need to keep carrying this pain as if it's a part of who you are? Forgiveness is the key to letting that weight fall away. Who needs this forgiveness? It's easy to justify the hurt. Those who have been wounded have reasons to feel pain. The other person's mistake is clear, it's obvious. But what now? What has that done? The one who erred might be waiting for a chance to start over. They might not show it, they might even pretend not to care, but deep down they hope. Or maybe they no longer have hope, because they believe they'll never be forgiven. And sometimes it's not even about who said they're sorry. It can be about those who never did, those who acted like nothing ever happened. And then comes the toughest question. Will this continue to define the life of the one who suffered? Because, in the end, forgiveness isn't just about who did wrong. It's about who carries the pain. What happens when you forgive? The world doesn't change. The past isn't rewritten. The pain doesn't disappear out of nowhere. But something within the one who forgives shifts. The weight lifts. Thoughts become lighter. The wound begins to truly heal. Forgiveness doesn't have to mean reconciliation. It doesn't have to mean instant trust. But it does mean freedom. It means no longer being a hostage to what happened. And that choice is available now. The question is, are you going to continue holding on to this? Or will you allow yourself to let go? What prevents forgiveness? Often, the resistance to forgiveness doesn't lie in the severity of the mistake, but in the pain it caused. It seems unfair to release something that hurt so deeply. It feels wrong to move forward without some sort of real compensation, and perhaps that's the problem. Waiting for the other person to fully understand the harm they inflicted, waiting for time to bring some sort of reparation, waiting for genuine remorse to arrive in the right way. But what happens while you wait? The hurt lingers. The weight remains. The past stays alive, repeating the pain, blocking peace. And what if that weight never ends? It's not fair to carry a mistake that has already been made against you. It's not fair to keep suffering for something that should have been left behind. Forgiveness is an act of courage, not because it absolves the one who did wrong, but because it frees the one who suffered. The pain that becomes a prison. Have you noticed how certain memories come rushing back at the most unexpected times? A phrase, a place, a smell, and suddenly the mind goes back to that moment. The body feels it again, the heart races. This is the pain that was never released. And do you know what's worse? It shapes decisions. It makes trust harder. It makes words sharper. It weighs life down with an extra burden, a heightened caution, a fear that perhaps shouldn't even be there. Pain can transform someone without them even realizing it, and little by little everything revolves around it. How long does this need to continue? What happens when you decide not to let an old story define the present? The choice only you can make. No one can force forgiveness. No one can make it happen out of obligation, but it needs to be a conscious choice. Choosing to let go, choosing to leave it behind, choosing to move forward without carrying that burden any longer. This doesn't mean everything will be as it was before. Some relationships don't heal, some scars remain, but the difference is that they no longer hold the power to define your life. Forgiveness isn't about justice. It isn't about who deserves it. It's about who needs to be set free. And that decision is here right now. So what will it be? Continue carrying it or finally let it go? And if there is no forgiveness, have you ever thought about what happens when forgiveness doesn't come? Time passes, but the wound doesn't heal. It might be forgotten for a moment, lying dormant under the distractions of daily life, but just one trigger, and it awakens. Resentment settles in the small gestures, in the prolonged silences, in the way of looking at the world. Without forgiveness, the past continues to dominate the present. Maybe the other person has moved on. Maybe they don't even know about the battle happening inside the one who was hurt. But the truth is, the one who suffers most from the lack of forgiveness isn't the one who was wrong. It's the one carrying the pain. The lack of forgiveness hardens. It creates barriers. It makes every new relationship viewed with suspicion. It keeps the heart always on the defensive, ready to protect itself. And how long will it be like this? How long will the past continue to dictate the future? What forgiveness does not mean the fear of forgiving often comes from a misunderstanding of what it means to forgive. Forgiving does not mean forgetting. What happened is part of the history and cannot be erased. Forgiving does not mean agreeing. The mistake remains a mistake and the pain is still valid. Forgiving does not mean getting close again. Some relationships need to be ended, and forgiveness does not require returning to what it once was. But forgiving means liberating oneself. It means removing the poison that was left in one's heart. It means moving on without carrying that shadow any longer. The moment to choose forgiveness never comes at the perfect moment. It never arrives when you feel completely secure to take that step. But if you wait for the day when everything makes sense, that day may never come. Forgiveness does not depend on feelings. It depends on a decision, and the decision is here, now. Will you continue to hold on to that pain, or will you choose to be free? The choice is already in front of those who need to forgive. Now what will be done with it, and what if this choice is ignored? What happens when you decide to hold on to the hurt, cling to the pain, and keep alive the memory of what wounded you? Time does not heal anything on its own. It merely hides. A wound that goes untreated does not disappear. It seeps into thoughts, reflects in behaviors, and affects how you see the world. Without forgiveness, the heart closes off. Little by little, bitterness settles in. The gaze becomes more rigid, the tone of voice colder, the ability to trust more distant. And the worst part, the person who hurt you can go on with their life without realizing the pain they left behind. But those who still hold on to the hurt remain prisoners of something that should have been left behind. How many opportunities have been lost out of fear of suffering again? How many people have paid the price for someone else's mistake in the past? And how long will this continue? What is this lack of forgiveness costing you? And what if the other person doesn't deserve it? Forgiveness is not about deserving. Perhaps the person who hurt you will never apologize. Perhaps they will never show remorse. Maybe they will go on with their life as if nothing ever happened. And that hurts. But holding on to that pain doesn't change what happened. It doesn't bring justice. It only prolongs the suffering. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing it to happen again. It doesn't mean forgetting the lesson learned. It simply means deciding that this wound will no longer have the power to control your life. The liberation isn't for the other person, it's for the one who forgives. So the question is, who should remain trapped by that pain? Who needs to be freed from it? What happens after forgiveness? It might not be immediate. It may take time to truly feel the weight lifted. But the decision is the first step. The mind becomes lighter. The heart begins to open again. Relationships are no longer viewed through the lens of past pain. The past loses its power to define the present, and suddenly there is space for something new. Now, the choice lies with the reader of this message. Will you continue to carry it, or will you allow yourself to let go? What's stopping you from forgiving now? Perhaps it's pride. Maybe it's the fear of appearing weak. Or it might be the misconception that by forgiving, you'll be diminishing what happened. But if you stop to think, who really loses by holding on to this bitterness? The other person may never realize how much it hurts. They may never understand the damage they caused. They might have even forgotten. But you feel it, you relive it, you carry it. Forgiveness isn't about saying that everything was fine, because it wasn't. It's about giving yourself the chance to live without that pain guiding every step. You have the right to be free. If someone told you there's a way to lighten this burden, would you refuse it? If you knew that a simple internal act could change how you see yourself, your relationships, your future, would you ignore that possibility? Forgiveness isn't a favor for the other person. It's a gift for you. You don't need to say anything to those who have hurt you. You don't need to go back on anything. You don't need to pretend it didn't happen. But you need to decide if you want to keep carrying that weight or if you want to live differently. What if that weight were lifted right now? What if you chose to release that pain at this very moment? What happens when forgiveness arrives? Have you ever heard of people who carry trauma for years and then suddenly feel free when they decide to forgive? It's not magic. It's not weakness. It's not letting someone off the hook. It's simply allowing life to move forward without that anchor pulling everything back. Forgiveness is freeing yourself from the cycle. It's about stopping the nourishment of pain. It's about taking back control of your own story. The past doesn't have to decide your future. Have you ever stopped to think about how long you've let that wound dictate your actions? How many times have you hesitated to trust someone out of fear of being hurt again? How many opportunities have you missed because you were looking backward instead of forward? How many nights of sleep were stolen by thoughts that insisted on reliving what should have been left behind? The past cannot be changed, but the way it impacts your future can. Forgiveness is that change. What do you gain by forgiving? Maybe you're still thinking, but what do I gain from this? You gain peace. You gain lightness. You gain the chance to move forward without invisible chains holding your heart back. You gain the freedom to create new stories without the old ones always being in control. And that is worth more than any quiet revenge. What happens if you don't forgive? And what if you decide not to forgive? What happens then? You continue to fight the same internal battle. The pain remains there, silent, present in small actions, shaping your worldview, preventing your life from flowing as it should. You protect yourself so much that you end up closing off. You harden yourself so much that you become someone you never wanted to be. And what about the other person? They may not even know. Maybe they've moved on while you remain stuck in time, trapped by what happened. Is it really worth it? The decision is in your hands. Forgiveness doesn't come first in feeling. Forgiveness comes first in decision. And once you decide, your heart will follow. This means that even if it seems impossible now, if you make that choice, your heart will learn to follow that path. You have that choice now. Will you continue to hold on to this pain, or will you let go and live differently? The answer can only come from you. What if you decide to let go now? Imagine for a moment. Close your eyes and visualize that pain, that hurt, that memory that keeps coming back. Now think about what would happen if right at this moment you chose to let go. If you chose to tell yourself, this no longer controls me. I no longer carry this weight. What would change? What would it be like to breathe without that burden? What would it be like to live without that ever-present shadow? That choice is within your reach. It doesn't depend on anyone else. It doesn't need validation from those who hurt you. It doesn't need an apology. It's just you, your freedom, your decision. The past won't change, but you can. What happened, happened. The mistake was made. The pain was real. But the question was never about changing the past. That's impossible. The real question is, will you let this define your future? Because if you don't forgive, what happened continues to command your life. Every time you avoid someone, when you close doors, when you feel your heart hardening, it's the past holding you back. But what if you let go? What if you decide that this mistake no longer defines your emotions, your thoughts, your way of living? What if you choose to look forward and not backward? What have you lost by not forgiving? Have you thought about that? How many opportunities have been wasted because the fear of suffering again prevented you from trusting? How many good moments have been sabotaged because the heart still carries old pains? How many nights have been spent reliving what should have already been left behind? Forgiveness is the key to reclaiming what has been lost. The peace you seek is on the other side of forgiveness peace. That's what you gain when you decide to let go. A lighter mind, a less burdened heart, a path without so many shadows from the past. What if that peace were within your reach right now? Would you accept it? Or would you continue to hold on to resentment, refusing to let go of something that only harms you? The truth is, by not forgiving, you are not punishing anyone but yourself. The other person doesn't need to change for you to be free. Perhaps this is the hardest part to accept. Forgiveness doesn't depend on the other person. It doesn't depend on an apology. It doesn't depend on the acknowledgement of wrongdoing. It doesn't depend on anything other than your decision to let go. Because in the end, the greatest impact of forgiveness doesn't occur in the heart of the one who made the mistake. It happens in the heart of the one who suffered. What are you waiting for? If you've made it this far, it's because on some level you know it's time to let go. Maybe you don't know how. Maybe you still feel resistance. But what if it was simple? What if all it took was to say to yourself, I choose to forgive. I choose to let this go. I choose not to be a prisoner of this pain anymore. Say that now, aloud, within yourself. Feel the weight falling away. Feel the relief of knowing you don't have to carry this forever. The decision is right there in front of you and now. Will you continue holding on, or will you finally let go? The choice is yours alone, and your future depends on it. Comment I choose to forgive, subscribe, and leave your like.